This is Highguard, a game by Wildlight Entertainment, a team full of developers behind titles such as Apex Legends, Call of Duty, and Titanfall. All of these games are staples of the FPS genre, so surely their first game will be great. Holy shit. Now before we start critiquing on how the game plays, I would like to first talk about how the game runs. The game runs like shit. Many players, including me, have complained about the game's performance, and considering the fact that the maps are fairly small, there's not a lot of dynamic terrain destruction like in a game like The Finals, or maybe Battlefield 6, and that there's only 6 people in the whole lobby, you would expect the game to run a lot better than it does. I'm going to show some of my own gameplay with an FPS counter in the corner for both Highguard and Apex Legends, and I want you to notice the average frame rate for the games. The difference is about 100 frames. For an FPS game, especially for an FPS game that seemingly they want to make competitive, performance should be a first priority. On top of just raw performance issues, somehow the devs of some of the largest FPS games have seemingly never played an FPS game on mouse and keyboard before. With mouse acceleration and mouse smoothing turned on by default, with no way in-game to turn it off. The only way to turn it off so far from what I can see is through a GitHub script, which just shouldn't be the norm, but somehow, for games like Arc Raiders, Marvel Rivals, and Battlefield 6, that has all become the norm. Surely an FPS game should make the shooting part of the game feel good. Another glaring issue this game has is the lack of settings, like just in general. You can't fine-tune your sensitivity with arrow keys or by typing in a number, right? And you also can't effectively double bind your keybinds, even though by default they are double bound. And you can't turn off features like anti-aliasing or motion blur in the settings. In an attempt to show how the keybinds were double bound by default, I asked one of my friends Magic to show me his keybinds, and then I saw that you could just reset your controls back to default. What do you mean that resetting your controls to default will not reset your keybinds? They are my mouse and keyboard controls. Are you telling me that my keybinds are not on my keyboard? Like, what does that mean? I need help with this. What does that mean? Now with all that extra stuff out of the way, let's talk about the actual gameplay. The core gameplay plays a lot like Minecraft Bed Wars, which was a great game, you know, I remember playing that every day after school, right? But the execution is frankly terrible in Highguard. The major consensus of the game is that it's just too boring with too much dead time in between fights, and the maps are just too large for the fact that there's only 6 total people in the lobby. There's a few ways that Highguard could remedy this, but the Highguard developers have stated that after a lot of testing, they would like to keep a 3v3 mode as their standard, so I will not talk about changing the player size. Instead, I'll be talking about the other aspects of the game specifically and how they can change them to increase the pacing of the game. The first thing I would like to point out is that the prep phase of the game is frankly pointless. Games like Valorant or Rainbow Six Siege have prep times because characters need to set up their utilities, and there are unique ways people like to set up their own utility. Think about Cypher cages and Cypher trip setups, or a Capcan placing his mines on the doorway. From what I have seen, at the start of the game, you don't have enough credits to fully reinforce every site anyway, so most people and most teams will just opt to reinforce a single site fully. I understand that throughout the game, you can buy more reinforcements, and that's fine. But because you can't reinforce both sites at the start of the game, and there's no util that you need to pre-set up, and I'm not saying they should add that because that would definitely slow down the pacing of the game even more, that virtually every team will set up the bases the same way. An idea I have that would help speed up the start of the game is to just remove the prep phase and set up the maps in a way where they're set up like a 2 checkpoint map in Overwatch. One of the sites is further away and slightly more exposed, and the site closest to the center of the base could be fully reinforced. This would still allow players to opt to spend their tokens or crystals or whatever they are to buy more reinforcements to reinforce the outer base anyway, which wouldn't affect the economy of the game. Doing that would remove the 1-minute prep phase timer, which a lot of players frankly don't enjoy. The second phase of the game that I want to talk about is the resource harvesting phase, and it is essentially just 2 minutes of you pressing F on a crystal. That's about as intense as clicking a pen in the back of class. As of right now, there's generally no real incentive to fight during this section of the game. You can farm crystals safely on the half of the map closest to your base, and you'll gain about as much resources as you would risking your life to walk to the middle of the map. And like I said before, there are chests everywhere, and you can just get your normal armor upgrades safely through the chests, which include gun upgrades, more bombs, maybe a saddle upgrade. This means there's no real incentive to fight during this part of the game, because all you will really be doing is risking your armor. From what I've seen, you can harvest about as much resources on the edge as you can in the middle of the map, and the chests both spawn the same loot. I think the easiest solution to this would be removing one of the side lanes of the map, as this would compress the map even more, and maybe reducing the amount of crystals that spawn outside of the contested middle zone. They could also make the chest in the middle spawn loot that is one tier higher than what you can currently buy in the shop. Because of how it is right now, you can farm blue shields in chests when you can buy blue shields in the shop, and you can farm purple shields in the chest when you can buy purple shields in the shop. In fact, if it gets into super late game, you can buy red armor, but you can only find purple armor still in the chest. And the guns aren't that much better either, because you can just buy an upgraded gun from the shop. Making the center chest spawn better higher tier loot would incentivize fighting for the chests that spawn there. This wouldn't shorten the time the match takes to play out, but it would increase the concentration of fighting throughout the game, because more people would be more willing to fight because there's now a reward for it. They could make the armor or the gun upgrades more expensive, and make the crystals in the center of the map more concentrated and more credits per crystal harvested. And then there's the attacking defense stage of the game. I honestly think this part of the game is pretty well as it is, but I think once the attackers get to the base, being highlighted as a defender makes it hard to play proactively. Any game mechanic that requires you to stand still and watch your base just take it isn't very fun. Overall, I think the game has a very good concept, it just has very poor execution. The combination of performance issues, accessibility issues, and gameplay design flaws is probably the reason why the game is so negatively received. And with the game receiving 10,000 negative reviews before the first day even ended, that shows signs to the dev that they must take changes. I sincerely hope the devs figure something out and find ways to fix the issues in these games. I thank you for your time, and I wish you guys all the best.